Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today, and welcome back if you were here with us yesterday. We're going to get started now. Um, my name is Haley, and I work at Modern Health. Typically, we partner with companies to offer comprehensive mental health benefits, but we're really excited during this uncertain and challenging time to offer this free community session to both users and non-users alike. We also have Peter here. You can see him on the video, who will be answering questions throughout, also from Modern Health. Up front, just want to go over a couple of housekeeping things. First of all, we welcome questions and comments throughout the whole conversation. But to ask a question, please use a chat box or the Q&A feature. All attendees are muted by default, but we'll pause often to answer the questions you write in. We'll also be recording the session and we'll send it out after. Now that we have that out of the way, I want to introduce our wonderful therapist, Dr. Erica Simon. She specializes in stress and anxiety and healthy lifestyles, and she's going to be leading this conversation on maintaining healthy lifestyles during this time.
Awesome. And first, Erica, if you don't mind going to the next slide, we do have just a quick legal disclaimer. We are so excited to have Erica here, but obviously the content in this webinar for us will be provided for educational purposes only today. It's not intended to be a substitute for professional advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Please contact your healthcare provider for clinical needs and never disregard professional mental health advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard in this webinar. Obviously, today we do encourage interactivity too. So please, as Haley said, use the chat feature, and we can try to connect, your questions with Erica today.
Right. Hi, everyone. My name's Erica Simon. I'm a clinical psychologist, and I have a background specialties with adjustment, anxiety, PTSD, and health-related concerns. I have also been trained in evidence-based techniques such as cognitive behavioral therapy, acceptance and commitment therapy, and emotion-focused therapy. So we'll be talking today about how to maintain healthy routines as you're trying to navigate the situation we have at hand with the COVID virus. And let's see. So our agenda, I'm going to go through and talk about changes to your normal routine. This can cause distress. This is totally a normal response, and we'll be talking about that further. And then we'll be talking about ways that you can maintain a healthy, balanced lifestyle as you're going through these stressful times. So we'll be talking about tips and tricks, and definitely submit any questions that you have. This can definitely be interactive, and I'm happy to take any questions as we go along. So first, I just want to start off by saying something that I've found to be very, very comforting to my clients, which is that the WHO, although this is a pandemic, it's the very first one in history that can be controlled if we all do our part. So, I think that this can be very helpful when we just think about the whole sort of, the context within which we're living right now. It feels very uncertain, and it's really important to know that this is we have our chance to actually do something about this time. So disruption to routine is very stressful, and it can be stressful no matter what's going on, but it can be particularly stressful when it's disrupted by something like what's going on right now. Healthy lifestyles are, of course, often challenging to maintain anyway, but right now, trying to maintain a healthy lifestyle is probably the last thing on your mind. So what we're going to be doing is talking about some actionable steps that you can take to cope with your stress and anxiety to help you be able to maintain your health over time. So the first one, which will come as no surprise, is to maintain a healthy routine as best as possible. So basics like eating healthy foods, fruits and vegetables, exercising, getting enough sleep, and hydrating are very important. When it comes to exercise, we know that it can have a profound effect on our immune system and functioning, on our health and well-being, on our mental health. There's just so many different ways that exercise is important. And you're probably noticing that you're having a disruption in what you normally do for exercise. So when you're thinking about exercise at this particular moment in time, it's important to think about how you can establish a new routine, whether it's, working out at home, doing some yoga, things like that. And also to consider exercise, maintaining it even outside of the home. So, there are local guidance around, whether it's shelter in place or social distancing. It's important to know that there are guidelines locally for most people that will help you understand, can I go outside? Can I go for a run? Just making sure that you're maintaining the appropriate kind of social distancing. So this is really important because nature is actually a really powerful stress reliever. Just being outside, being in nature, being outdoors, getting some sunshine can be really beneficial. So again, maintaining that exercise routine, and again, following the local guidelines around where you need to go or shouldn't go is really important. Getting enough sleep is also really important. This can be really difficult when we're thinking about how stressed we are at this particular moment in time. But getting enough sleep is another feature of health that has really been shown in research to be really vitally important for immune functioning. Getting enough sleep can actually help with emotion regulation. It can just make us feel better. So getting at least 7 hours of sleep a night is really vital at this particular moment in time. And then, of course, we all know we're supposed to hydrate. So any questions about this particular slide at this moment?
We have one question from someone who was having some back pain, so just maybe not able to do their typical workout routines or do some of the things that maybe are suggested. Do you have any ideas for that?
So you're having some back pain. Yes, that can be difficult if you're experiencing some sort of pain flare up right now. This is the sort of thing that can be really important to talk with your physician to make sure that you're following proper guidelines. Whenever you're dealing with something like back pain, gentle yoga poses can be beneficial. You can look online and find guidance around how to use stretching and yoga to still maintain an exercise routine while also being mindful of any back pain that you experience. And again, you always want to consult with your physician. I'm not a physician, so if you have any questions, but yes, yoga and stretching can both be very helpful.
We also have a question from someone who's working from home and is in a shelter in place. They live in an area that has been impacted by that, and they're having to kind of create a new exercise routine at home, kind of with this new timeline. Do you have any tips on how to overcome some of the inertia of just originally, or first getting started with this new routine?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what we really find is important when we're trying to establish a new habit or new routine is the most important part is just starting. So whenever we think about establishing a new routine, we tend to think about, oh, I need to exercise for an hour and I need to do it 5 days a week. And then trying to fit that in can be really difficult. It can feel so overwhelming that we just don't even start. So it's really interesting how just starting something, just having that initial, okay, I'm just going to give myself 5 minutes of stretching per day. Beginning that habit will actually help you start to build it into your routine. So setting a really obtainable goal of I'm going to exercise for 5 to 10 minutes at this particular time, and then you can expand it as you start feeling like you're getting going, and you will really find often that just that getting started will help you feel like, okay, I actually want to do more. It's also something where if you are trying to exercise at home or you're, a lot of times with the sheltering in place, again, you want to read your local guidelines, but they actually, the shelter in place guidelines are really good about telling you exactly what you can and cannot do. And with sheltering in place in a lot of the areas, for example, in the Bay Area, they recommend that you can go outside, you can go for a run, you can go for a hike if you're doing it by yourself, or you're maintaining the 6 feet from another individual that you encounter. So there's ways of trying to do exercise in different ways, even with the shelter in place. So just thinking about that can also be helpful. It can kind of open it up rather than what do I do when I'm at home. And then again, yoga is just a really great way to get some exercise in. You don't really need a lot. You don't need any equipment. You can even just do it on, in your living room on your carpet.
Awesome. We've also got a question about any tips for sleeping when people are just feeling like it's difficult to fall asleep even when they're tired.
Absolutely. So with sleep, it can be really difficult, especially when you're feeling stressed out. So a couple of things can be really helpful with, well, there's lots of things that can be helpful with sleep, but two that are coming to mind right now. One is, again, establishing a routine. And this is something we can talk about a little bit more broadly, which is just establishing a routine in general in your life right now to start getting kind of a sense of a new normal. So right now, everything's changing. You're working from home probably, or you're not working. And there can be a huge disruption just to a sense of a routine overall. So really starting to break it down like, okay, just when time do I wake up? Waking up at a normal time, brushing your teeth and putting on clothes, eating breakfast like you would if you were going to work, starting to build in that routine. And then the same thing at the end of the evening. So, stopping work at a specific time, feeding the family at the same time, and starting to just kind of wind down. And having that sense of routine can help with the sleep. The second piece that can be helpful is, again, meditation has a pretty profound impact on our ability to just kind of like be a little bit more mindful and unwind. So if you've never checked out meditation, it's a really great way to just calm the mind and calm the body and give yourself something to focus on other than your thoughts. There's lots of different ways that you can meditate, either by focusing on your breathing. You can focus on a mantra. There's a technique called mantra repetition, which is a really great way of picking it's a word or a phrase that has some sort of meaning to you. You can look it up. It's a great technique. And it helps you sort of connect to something else to think about in your mind rather than your racing thoughts. So those two things, meditation or mantra repetition, have both been shown to be pretty powerful for helping with stress and giving yourself the ability to just disconnect from those thoughts so you can fall asleep. And then there's the other techniques like, taking a warm bath, drinking some hot tea, non-caffeinated chamomile tea, things like that can also help.
And we also have some people writing in with some suggestions about they find Headspace really helpful for meditation or Insight Timer. And if anyone here is a Modern Health user, you can also check out the meditations in our app as well. And please keep writing in the suggestions. It's awesome as well to hear what other people are doing
That's great.
with these challenges.
Yes, there's also the Calm app is really great for sleep as well, because they have sleep stories that are specifically geared towards helping you. They're basically adult bedtime stories, and they're really great. There's lots of different kinds of people who read these different bedtime stories, and so you can find one that a narrator that really fits with feeling soothing for you.
We have some more suggestions from people writing in that Yoga with Adriene is a great YouTube yoga series that's free. So that could be a great way to try the yoga. And someone was asking what was a bedtime story for adults, that was a Calm app, right?
Mm-hmm. It's the Calm app. It's a really great app for meditation and for the bedtime stories. They specifically try and build in a lot of different ways to help people sleep better. So it's a great app. Yeah, it's the one that I use. Okay. Are we good to move on to the next?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, great. I also wanted to mention from a work perspective, this is the time, if you are working from home, I highly recommend that you establish a work routine and that you do so in a very specific place in your home. So finding a place that you can kind of carve out to have your computer, to have your papers, that's the place that you go and you sit, and you really maintain a strict boundary around that being your workplace, just like you would go to work in an office, really carving that out and keeping that as a protected workspace. And that you then when you leave work, you don't come back to that and across the evening. So maintaining those kinds of boundaries with work is really important. And then with children, it's also really important to establish these routines, because these sorts of routines will help them feel a sense of normalcy. So yeah, those are just two last points I wanted to say.
Actually, now that you said that, one quick question that came
Sure.
up in regards to that is someone's finding it difficult for their children to adjust to being home and keeping a routine for them and themselves. So do you have any tips how to make that transition better for children?
Mm-hmm. So this is really coming up with a schedule that the kids that build in things like play, and again, like getting the kids up, brushing their teeth, putting on regular clothes. Things like that can seem like really small details, but they can make a really big difference in how effectively we're able to start establishing a sense of routine and normalcy. So getting up, having breakfast, brushing teeth, getting dressed, and then just like they would at school, having like this section of time. Okay, we're going to do, if we're doing some homeschooling stuff, this section of time is for this section of time is for that. Having a regular lunchtime, like really like trying to put in your mind this idea of how do we kind of create this sense of going to school or going to work, and literally just writing it out, like having a list, like a routine, and like, okay, now we're going to do this, and now we're going to do that. Another thing that can be helpful with kids is, again, to build in some playtime, some specific playtime, and then also asking them, kind of giving them a couple of options as you're creating the routine for how they might want it to be structured. You don't have to give them lots of options, but maybe like two. Like, would you like to do this or that at this time? Just giving them a little bit of choice can make a really big difference in how they feel about what's happening as well.
One other question on routines that we got. I battle with depression and I'm finding self-isolation extremely difficult. Haven't we all? I'm having a hard time even getting the motivation to build this routine. Are there any tips on, even one actionable thing that someone could do, in the morning to get the motivation to, start that routine and overcome that inertia?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it is really tough to be dealing with this, being at home and feeling really socially isolated. So one thing that can be helpful is to pick something that you find enjoyable to do first thing in the morning. So thinking about anything that you find enjoyable, this is the time to get really creative around what kind of, what your routine actually looks like. So if you have something that does make you feel a little bit more motivated, makes you feel a little bit better, a little bit happier, do that first thing in the morning. Even if it's not quite exactly in line with what you would normally do if you were going to work as normal, as usual. So a lot of times we get up and we do a lot of things in the morning that are just inherently really not enjoyable. So picking something that's fun. You can also try and meditate first thing in the morning if you're trying to establish that routine. Just doing like 5 minutes of stretching, something that activates your body. With depression, there is that inertia anyway. Like depression kind of has it. We have a tendency towards inaction just in general. So doing something as simple as like even 2 minutes of stretching. It's amazing how just getting the body activated can help to just start. It's that beginning the action that is often the most difficult thing that we struggle with. So just beginning the action and making it really small. It's just a small thing. 2 minutes of stretching or 2 minutes of something enjoyable can get you going.
I think we can move on to the next slide, and just everyone, for your information, we'll have time for more questions at the end as well.
Great. And these are great questions. I'm really appreciating them. Okay, so the next thing that is important to know is that when we're stressed out, our breathing changes pretty significantly. And oftentimes it's in a way that we don't even necessarily realize. So when we breathe, when we're stressed, we tend to breathe chaotically, we breathe quickly, we tend to take these sort of like chest breaths that are, erratic. So one thing that can be really powerful in pretty quickly can have an impact on well-being and like sense of calmness is to do a quick breathing exercise. So things that are important to note about breathing is that it's important to really slow down the breath, to breathe with the abdomen instead of the chest. We breathe with our chest when we're stressed and anxious. It's kind of a biological wiring for fight or flight. So just focusing on not breathing with the chest, exhaling completely, breathing with the belly. And then what's also important is to breathe through our nose. When we're anxious and stressed, we tend to breathe through our mouths. And breathing through your nose automatically regulates your breathing in a different way, as does the belly breathing. And then the last piece that's important is that when we're stressed, we breathe differently than what's optimal, and we take our exhalations shorten. So optimal breathing is the exhalations are about twice as long as the inhalations, but when we're stressed, that swaps. We'll take these really big inhalations and then we don't really exhale adequately. So just taking a few moments to close your eyes and take these slow belly breaths through the nose and to focus on just softening and slowing down the exhalation can be helpful. A way that I think you can think about it from a visualization standpoint is ocean waves can either come crashing in or they can kind of slide in and slide out on the sand. And when you're stressed, we tend to breathe in those big crashing waves. And what we want to do is just slow it down and think about that kind of sliding in and sliding out. So I'm wondering if everybody would be willing to just for a couple of minutes, if we can actually give this a try. Okay, so if everybody wants to close your eyes and take a couple of breaths, just noticing where it's at. And focus on taking a few slow breaths using your abdomen. Breathing in through your nose very gently and breathing out. And now that you've taken a couple of breaths, focus on your exhalations, lengthening them just a little bit. And then a little bit more. Slowly in and slowly out. Take just a couple more breaths, slow belly breaths. And whenever you're ready, open your eyes. All right, what did people notice about that?
We have some people saying it was very calming, relaxing. Shoulders feel relaxed.
Yeah.
Made someone smile.
Oh, that's awesome.
less tension and a feeling of being a little bit more in control.
Yeah. Yeah.
Loved it.
Yay. So it's a really simple exercise. We did that we probably just did that for maybe like 45 seconds. I didn't time it, but it was really very brief. And it can have a really powerful effect in a really short period of time. You can do this anywhere, at any time. You're in your home, you're getting groceries and trying to social distance from somebody, your kids are, crying, or anytime you're feeling stressed, you can literally take 45 seconds to a couple of minutes and do this. And it can really be a good way to just calm and center yourself. This is also really useful. This is a technique that can be very useful as you're trying to go to sleep. To just focus on this kind of breathing can really just, it helps to rebalance your autonomic nervous system, which is the part of your nervous system that controls that fight or flight response that makes us feel really stressed. Any questions about this particular technique?
I think we're good.
Okay, good. It's super simple. It's just super simple. So, all right. So the next thing that's really important to note is that worry is contagious. I can totally imagine that pretty much most of you have spent time on social media and Slack channels and things like that, getting your updates about this particular virus, the COVID-19 coronavirus. And I'm imagining, if you're like a normal human, that has made you feel really stressed. So it's really important to note that, we can really feed off of each other's worries and anxieties and concerns. It's how, it's how we're built. So picking one reputable source like the WHO, or my favorite one right now is the CDC, because they have if you go to the CDC, they have an excellent resource for knowing exactly what's going on with the coronavirus. It's very clear, it's very actionable. They tell you exactly what's going on. And they do it in a way that's really accessible to all of us. It doesn't feel too technical. It doesn't feel overwhelming. And it's also accurate and up to date. So it's, if you are constantly on social media and Slack channels, you're really living, you're kind of putting yourself in this stew of stress. So picking just that one place to go to that's totally reputable, you can trust it, and then limiting the number of times that you look for updates. And then this relates to the next piece, which is also limiting your intake of inflammatory news. So again, this is picking one reputable news source. It's really optimal if you pick some sort of trusted local news source, one where you can get local updates about what's going on with like sheltering in place and travel, et cetera. And that also gives you like a broader sense of what's going on in the country. Pick that one reputable news source and then limit the number of times you check for updates. So this is really important because we are neurobiologically hardwired to have a bias towards attending to negative stuff. It's how we're hardwired, and it makes sense because from an evolutionary standpoint, it's how we survived, the saber-toothed tiger that was over there that wanted to eat us. We're biased towards seeing what, we're looking for danger and threat. And then this can really feed itself when we're, in a constant news cycle. So picking one reputable news source and then picking a time of day, you can really build this into that routine that we were talking about. It's important to be up to date and have the information. We want to be informed. We don't want to be going around doing stuff when we're supposed to be sheltering in place, for example. And picking just that one source we know we can trust, and then picking a time of day to check it. So, and it's important to also build in a buffer. So you do not want to be checking the news first thing in the morning. and you don't want to be checking the news in the late in the evening as well, or before you go to bed. This is really important. You do not want to be checking the news before you go to bed. That is another way that you can really help to improve your sleep, your ability to fall asleep, is to do this. Picking something like maybe at dinner time, you do your daily check-in to see what's going on for local updates, and then you put that news away. It's very, very important to do that. And what this will do is it'll help you stay up to date. You're going to feel like, okay, I know what's going on. I'm informed, and you're going to, again, pull yourself out of that stress stew that we're all living in. What's also really important to note about social media and all the information that's going around right now that we're all trying, everybody's trying to share, is that there's a lot of information that's going around in news sources that are either misinformation, it's hyped up headlines, or it's both. And it can be really difficult to just navigate all of that and know what's true and what's not true. And there's a lot of misinformation that's going on right now about the virus itself and about what we are supposed to be doing or not doing. So picking that one reputable news source can really help you just cut through all of that and make sure you're getting the right information.
This is an interesting question that we got to that's somewhat related, less about news, but more about family and friends. How do we deal with family and friends who can be a source of worry because they get caught up with some of the social media worry frenzy or other news frenzy?
Yes, so that's a great question. So you can cite this. You can say, "Hey, I attended this workshop." It's not really a workshop. What is this? It's a kind of it's a conversation. So you attended this conversation, and that you were from Modern Health, and that the guidance is to avoid the social media frenzy, and share with them what you learned, and say, I'm really trying to limit my intake of news to two situations. One, my one time per day, that you've built in. And you also, of course, want to get updates if you're going to like travel or you're going to go and do something. You want to make sure that you're up to date if something like that is going on. But yeah, just share with them that this is really important, and share with them if it helped you to quell some of your worry and some of your anxiety and stress. And oftentimes just sharing your personal experience with it can be really powerful, because everybody wants to feel better, and we don't realize that we're literally feeding our stress and anxiety by trying to be informed. And what's also interesting is that when you're in it, because of how we're biologically wired to look for threat, when you're in it, it makes us think we have to be doing this. This feels like the right choice. And it's not helpful. It's not helpful. And it just, that constant source of stress and anxiety, and also, paired with the misinformation that's going around, actually makes us less able to adaptively respond to what is actually required of us during this outbreak. Anything else on? Okay. Yeah.
I think we're good to move on.
Okay. So this one is really important. So laughter really is the best medicine. And we have lots and lots of research that shows that laughter has lots of amazing benefits for health and mental health. So not only does it just feel better to laugh than to not laugh, but it literally helps us with our immune functioning. It reduces stress. It can help with chronic pain. It can improve mood and functioning. Laughter literally is medicine for us. So now's the time to watch funny, enjoyable shows. Pick a Netflix funny series to really just dig into, and this is the time to Netflix and chill. But to do it, avoiding something like that some sort of dark show that's on Netflix. You don't want to get into dark, serious shows right now. It can feel like you want to. There's definitely that tendency towards, again, because we're sort of biased towards that negativity. But you want to avoid that and pick things that are funny and lighthearted. That's really the best way to feel better in the situation. There's also calling up a friend that makes you laugh. We all have those friends that we just know that when we talk, laughter is going to ensue. And if you have a friend like that, call them up, talk with them. It's really important to find all the different ways that you can laugh. I like to watch squirrel videos. There's lots of funny squirrel videos online that can totally, like, every time I'm feeling bad, that's my go-to. I like the squirrel videos. So, just thinking about the stuff that makes you laugh in particular, whether it's stand-up comedy, or, playing, games, with your family members that make you laugh. That's you're really focusing on not having that, not being pulled towards the serious, dark stuff right now is really important.
Someone just recommended, apparently Netflix has a new feature. I think it's called Netflix Party, where you can now chat about shows you are watching with friends while you're watching them, allowing for you to maintain that social distancing, but also have that shared experience, hopefully around laughter and funny shows.
That's awesome. That is really, really great. I love that. And it's important because, with Netflix, I turned my Netflix on and it was like trending now, and everything was all stuff that was like really dark or related to, way too close for comfort for what we're experiencing, on the movie front and whatnot. So I love that they added that feature, and maintaining that social connection is really important. So speaking of that, it's really, really important to note that social distancing is not the same as social isolation. It can feel that way, but it's not the same. So it's vital in these times to connect with the people who matter to you. This is the time to do things like, use technology to our advantage. So not even calling up the friend that makes you laugh, using Google Hangouts or Skype to connect with them. That face-to-face experience that we can have, even through technology, makes a big difference. Phone calls are great, for sure. If that's what you can do, it's great. But having that face-to-face interaction and seeing each other's faces and talking through things and laughing and connecting, finding ways to play board games together. You can each have, if you each have the same game, you can find ways to do them together. With two different boards. You can totally do things like, Cards Against Humanity, or What the Meme, and, funny things like that. It's really a time to find creative ways to use technology to help us laugh and connect with one another. And if you do start noticing that you're not connecting with people and you are feeling isolated, that's your indication. I need to do this. So connecting with the people who matter to you, talking with them. You can talk about your anxieties and worries, but again, it's important to really try and contain that. Talk about concerns. If you're really feeling concerned about something, and then try and turn it towards something that's positive and enjoyable. It's there's a balance here where it's like we want to be informed, we want to share our concerns. That we don't want to just pretend that everything's great and we're just laughing and everything's fantastic. And we just have to always kind of keep in mind that we are going to have that tendency, we're going to have that pull towards talking about what we're struggling with. And at some point that's not actually beneficial. Again, it's just kind of part of that feeding into that frenzy, feeding into that worry. So again, just connecting in whatever ways you can, using technology, and remembering that we are all in this together. We are all, we are together in this. This is, no person in a, no person is immune to this. We have to know that we are all struggling with the same things. And so, keeping that in mind, and then finding ways to maintain that we're in this together mentality, and coming together is really important.
We have a couple of good ideas coming up in the chat as well. Somebody shared, which I think they shared to everyone. So if anyone's interested, they shared a link to tabletopia.com. You can play free online board games with friends. It's a cool idea. Someone also has a weekly Zoom lunch with their friends to catch up.
Great.
So some other good ideas.
Yeah, exactly. Like, just Google Hangouts is great, or Zoom. You know, you can have lots of people up on the screen, and then yeah, just eat together. It can feel a little silly, um, maybe possibly, but it really does make a difference to do these sorts of things.
And then we have a question about social distancing. So since we don't really know how long social distancing is going to last, someone's asking if there's going to be any long-term effects from that social distancing.
Any long-term effects? Can you say just a little bit more?
Um, the exact question was, could the social distancing have any long-term effects? Since we don't really know how long this will last, I think it's more about like on our kind of like social lives and our person.
Yeah, that's a really good, interesting question. I think what will happen is we're gonna have a period of time where we are social distancing, and that will start feeling like the new norm. Um, so I would imagine, just because of how we are as humans, once we start kind of doing something and then we switch again, it can feel a little odd. So I would imagine there will be a transition period after we're not social distancing, where our tendency will still be to like keep 6 feet, or do certain things like that. And I think that will eventually go back to normal. So I don't think my sense is, just based on how we are, that we're humans are really resilient, and we can bounce back. So yeah, I don't think it'll have. I just kind of feel like it won't have like a long-term effect on our ability to connect with people. Um, if that answers the question.
Yeah,
I
thank
think
you.
so.
We also have an interesting question on kind of the opposite of that. We have one viewer who said they're all in a, they're working from home or sheltering in place with four other people. It's a busy house, and they actually want to get some alone time, or try to get some
Yeah.
space and distance from people. How might you recommend, trying to get almost some of the isolation, or the distance, even if you can't get the physical distance?
Okay, that's a great question. Because yeah, we also need some alone time to kind of think our own thoughts and reboot. And you can feel a little stir crazy, like we're all kind of stuck in the same place. I think there, two things are coming to mind. One, you can decide as a group how you could, have a plan built into the routine where people can get some time alone. Like, okay, at this time we're gonna each kind of go to separate spaces and read a book, or do this or do that. And bringing up the fact that it's important for us, as it's important for our mental health to be able to actually have some space, and that's not necessarily something that's automatically happening right now for families. So how do you build that in very purposefully? And again, I highly recommend just having a conversation. It's important for mental health for everybody to have together time and alone time. And how can we, in this house, create some kind of plan to where it's automatically built in, and nobody is feeling like, oh, I'm avoiding you right now. It's like, no, we're purposefully choosing to do this for our mental health. And then the other piece is, from my understanding from the shelters in place guidance that I've read so far, and again, you want to go with your local guidance, being outside and going for a walk and maintaining the social distancing while you're out is a really great way to get some space. Just go for a walk, and you're kind of getting a 2-for-1. You're walking, you're getting some exercise, you're getting the nature, or you're getting 3-for-1. You're getting the nature, and then if you're able to be around in nature, and then you're also getting some time to yourself.
Awesome. Yeah, we got another good tip of listening to a podcast or other music, and zoning out and trying to create some distance there, even if you aren't able to get out of the house for a while.
Yeah. All right. What other questions? Let's see here. So yeah.
Yeah, we had one question, and I think it relates to the third tip about just some of the kind of the fear and uncertainty with it all. And it relates to kids. And how would you recommend for someone whose kids are worried about this or who are, struggling and coping it with themselves? And as a parent, how might you suggest them to, provide that support to their children, even when them as the parent might not know? Might not have all the certainty themselves.
That's a great question. So I think with kids, again, like establishing as much of a routine as possible to create normalcy. Kids crave being able to predict stuff even more so than adults do. We all crave certainty. Humans don't like uncertainty and ambiguity. We just don't. And kids even more so. So the more you can build in that routine and really establish it and include things like play, um, it's going to help them. I think giving them choices whenever you can is really important. So do you want this or that? I mean, that's kind of a general thing with kids in overall, but especially in this time, giving them a little bit of choice can help them, can help reduce some of their anxiety. Simple choice. And then talking with them about their anxiety and worries, having an open conversation with them, and keeping it on just on a kid level, and talking about things like, for example, you know, we are all able to, there's something we can do about, in this situation. We are able, and that's what we are doing. Like we are directly purposefully contributing to working towards ending what's happening, like to help fix what's happening. We're actively doing that. And I think having that concept of, hey, we're staying home and we're doing this and we're doing that, because we're doing our part, can be helpful. Because the other thing is, it's like, this will end. It doesn't feel like it's going to, and there's a lot of uncertainty about how it's going to go across time. And we know that, every pandemic ends. So, talking with them on simple level, not talking about a lot of the details about what's going on, but keeping it super simple at their level. We're doing our part. We're all in this together. This will end, at some point, and just talking with them, like, what are their fears and concerns, and trying to address them can be really useful. A lot of times, I think it can be really tough to have open conversations with kids, because when we feel like exactly as you were saying, when we're feeling uncertain about it ourselves. So just kind of really establishing those basics around, this is going to end. We're doing our part. And there's lots of really smart people who are out there figuring this out so that we can fix it.
That's great. Thank you.
We also have a great question on how you would recommend handling a situation where your roommates maybe aren't taking the situation as seriously as you are, or taking social distancing as seriously. So maybe they're still going to friends' houses or having their boyfriends over or visiting their parents, and how to kind of balance that out or how to deal with that situation.
That is a great question. And this is a tricky one because it is really hard. It's like we're all kind of in control of our own behaviors and actions. Different people are taking this more or less seriously for sure. Again, recommending the CDC link. You just go to the CDC and page. There's a link to the updates about the virus. And I think just, asking them to, would they be willing to, please look, this is what you learned, would they be willing to read it, or giving them some basic facts from the CDC and citing that. I think what else can really happen with the social media frenzy is that, one of it is we get sucked into it. The other thing is we are so overwhelmed, and then there's lots of people saying, oh, it's no big deal, and let's get herd immunity and things like that. Um, that misinformation can also just make people go, I'm just whatever. I don't even know. I'm just going to continue doing what I'm doing, sharing with them what you learned. And then, figuring out, okay, if they're not social distancing, then you're going to have, like stepping up your game around like, okay, well then this is what I'm going to do, and sharing with them what you're doing, to try and mitigate what they're doing. I think those are kind of the two ways that you can handle it, because it is really tricky.
Awesome. We have another interesting question. My significant other and I live in a small space and don't have the option to have our own working space. Any tips on how to maintain a healthy relationship during a stressful time like this?
Yes, that is a great question. These are all great questions. So again, I think if you can't have different spaces to work in, then it's again important to just decide very purposefully, have a conversation around how you're going to still kind of divide up the space. So like if you both have to work at the kitchen table, having, you're each sitting on, there's the line and this is your side and this is my side. Something as basic as that, I mean, it really can, as you're carving it out and being purposeful around what you're doing and having conversations around it, can start putting boundaries around that routine. Making a decision that you're not going to talk, like you're going to just not constantly talk with each other, that while you're at work, and having that boundary can be really useful. I think there's, again, just the more that you can, do whatever you can to, consciously provide guidelines with each other around what you're doing is already beneficial. Yeah, it is tough though.
Yeah, no,
Oh, and then
definitely.
the final thing is too, at the end of the day, like leaving work at work. So, really just deciding you're not going to continue, like you're leaving work life and now you're in your relationship life in the evenings is important as well.
That's awesome. That's great advice. And I think we probably have time for one more question. This comes from someone who asked, what I find hard is to notice that I'm stressed before I can act on it to course correct. Do you have any tips to recognize how stressed you are in the moment so that you can calm yourself down before it, maybe continues to escalate?
Okay, that is a great question. Yeah, you want to try and you want to get ahead of stress as much as possible and avoid that worry spiral. And when you're avoiding the worry spiral, you'll probably note that you have certain experiences that begin that worry spiral, and just taking some time to think about yourself, like and tapping into thoughts that you're having that tend to start the worry spiral, actions that you're doing that can start the worry spiral, i.e. being on Slack or social media, and then tapping into yourself physiologically, like what are physical symptoms that you experience when you start the worry spiral. So do you start noticing that you have chest tightness, or you're feeling, hot flashes, or you're feeling like you kind of can't catch your breath? Tapping into those three domains and figuring out, just, thinking about what your pattern is, and then being really mindful of when that initial, thing that tends to be the start of the spiral happens. Just you checking in with yourself regularly and noting if that's actually happening. Is really important. And then the other thing is just to do quick mindfulness exercises, like checking in with yourself, if several times during the day, just okay, how am I feeling right now, and just pausing and paying attention to how you're feeling on purpose across the day can also be a way to get ahead of that worry spiral.
Great. Well, I think we can begin to wrap up. So if we could go to the last slide. Just a reminder of next steps. So if you're a Modern Health user, it's a great time to schedule a session or chat with your coach or therapist. Reach out to your HR team or contact Modern Health at info@ or go to our website. And just a reminder, we're having a lot of these conversations in the next week. And so please join us for the rest of them. We have one on financial confidence in challenging times tomorrow. And thank you so much, everyone who attended. And thank you so much, Erica, for such a wonderful conversation.
Thank you all so much. This has been wonderful. Thank you for your wonderful questions.
And lastly, please feel free to send any feedback our way. You'll see a pop-up when you close out, and we'll also be sending a feedback survey. So thank you so much for your participation in this conversation.
Thanks, everyone.